What's up, guys? So this is Greg, and we're here with another educational video. The topic this week is going to be reviewing some popular protein bars. This was suggested by Caitlin in the Facebook group. I just did a review on some energy drinks a week or two ago, and this would be a good kind of elaboration of that, kind of going over some popular protein bars. Okay, so we'll jump right into it. As always, you'll get this directly emailed to you with the infographics, and also can always log into this website, myobrainperformance.com/education. Okay. So to start off, before we get into the actual bars, we'll go over kind of three characteristics we should look for in a good protein bar. So you obviously can see this in the 12 bars I reviewed, but also if a different bar isn't on the review sheet, you can use these three principles as kind of grading it yourself. Okay. So the first thing is going to be looking for a relatively low fat bar. You see at the end here, I have less than 10 grams is going to be ideal. Probably something in that 5 to 8 gram range is going to be the best you can do with a bar. The reason for that being because fat is so dense and not very filling. If you're a fat loss client on maybe 50 to 75 grams of fat, you don't want to waste 15 or 20 grams of that on a bar that's this big. Okay, so you want to kind of get more filling foods for your fat intake. So limiting it in a bar is going to be ideal. Second thing here is going to be a good protein to carb ratio. So obviously, one of the drawbacks to doing a bar versus a powder or a shake is that a powder or shake is going to have a lot fewer grams of fat and carbohydrate in it. Maybe a really good shake could have 1 gram of fat, 2 carbs, 25 grams of protein. But a good bar may have like 7 grams of fat, 15 carb, 20 grams of protein, right? Now would be kind of like best case scenario. So you're understanding that you're going to have some more fat and carbs if you're choosing a bar over a powder, but you still want to get the most protein possible as far as a percentage of the calories. So when you look here, probably close to a 1-to-1 ratio is going to be the best you can do with most good tasting bars. So if it has, say, 15 grams of carbs, look for about 15 grams of protein. If it has 25 carbs, look for about 25 grams of protein, right? If you get into the range, and we'll see some examples here where it has 26 carbs and 11 grams of protein, that's not really a good protein source at that point. It's kind of more of a carbohydrate and fat bar with a little bit of protein sprinkled in there. Okay. And the third thing is a high bioavailability of their protein source. So some bars could use a whey for their protein source. Some could use like a soy or pea or milk, which is kind of similar to whey in a sense. So you want to look for an animal-based protein source like whey or milk. That's going to be the most high bioavailability there, meaning that if you have a very high source of protein, say 25 grams of whey, the bioavailability of that may be like 90 to 95%, which means you actually can absorb, what's that, like 21, 22 grams of that 25, right? Versus if something's very, very low on that list, I'm not going to make up something, but say if something has like a 40% bioavailability, that means if you have 20 grams of that, maybe you're only getting like 8 grams as far as the benefit of it for building muscle. Okay, so look for an animal-based protein source there. Obviously, if you're not vegan or vegetarian, like whey or milk, to have the kind of best bang for your buck with the actual protein grams you're getting. Okay, so those are the three characteristics. Now let's jump into the 12 bars I looked at. I didn't really rank these from best to worst, but I kind of ranked them into like the best grades, moderate grades, and then the worst grades of the 12 I looked at. Okay. So we have obviously the fat, carb, protein of each one of these, the protein source, and then the grade. So this page is all an A grade. We look at these really quick. This is the 1 bar, the Quest bar, probably the two most popular on the market. Pure protein is decently popular. I think someone recommended this in the group as well. And the Synthesix Crisp, I haven't, maybe I've had like one of these before. I don't see a lot of these around, but it is the #1 selling bar on bodybuilding.com. So obviously I wanted to include it on here if it's going to be that popular. So a few things you see as far as commonalities here. All of these are pretty low fat, right? 6 to 8 grams here. The carbohydrate intake and the protein intake is pretty much 1-to-1. Pure protein is actually a little bit higher protein than carbohydrate, but you're kind of splitting hairs here when it's just a couple of grams. But you're seeing about that 1-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. And then you're seeing an animal-based protein source with either whey or milk. Obviously, if it's a milk protein, you're going to have both whey and casein as a source. So all of these get an A grade pretty obviously. So obviously if it's not one of these 4, but if you see a bar that's similar to this, low fat, 1-to-1 carb to protein, animal-based protein source, that's pretty much an A grade, the best you're gonna do with a bar in my opinion, okay? Then go into this second level here. So we get into some B and C grades. So this one right here is the Optimum Nutrition Cake Bites, the Oat Mega Bars. This is probably like my favorite bar as far as taste that I've had, as far as a protein-ish type bar. The Detour Low Sugar, and then a Fit Crunch. So let's go over some of these B ones first. So obviously you see the ON and Omega are both pretty low fat at 7 grams. The carb to protein gets a little bit more carbohydrates than protein now, as compared to the A grades. You see it's not really that close to 1-to-1 anymore, especially here with the Oat Mega. But they do still have a pretty good protein source here with milk and whey. So you get kind of the B grades there. Then the last two get to be just a higher calorie bar in general, right? So it is still a 1-to-1 ratio pretty much here with carbs and protein. And there's obviously going to probably be more fat in there if there's just more of everything else in there. And it's still a protein or an animal source with whey here. So still a B grade, but still it's a big chunk of your calories. That may be like, I don't know, 250, 300 calories in a bar. So I do think this company actually has like a snack size, but I went with the normal size just because it's kind of, you can't really compare a smaller size of a bar to other people's normal bars, right? But overall, the macro ratio of this bar is actually really damn good. It's just a pretty big bar. So that's kind of why it gives it a B grade. If you're on a fat loss diet, the snack Detour low sugar bar probably would be an A grade as far as the overall intake there. And then we get into the Fit Crunch here, getting a C grade. Mainly it's because the fat intake is really creeping up here. When you get into that 15 plus range for just a bar that's this big, in my opinion, it's just not a very efficient way to allocate out your fat macros to make sure you stay full throughout the day. Okay, so again, it does have a really good protein to carb ratio, it does have a good protein source, so it doesn't have a terrible grade here, but that's just a lot of fat in a bar. Okay, and these last 4 here, kind of going over, again, the not so good ones, that C to F range. So the RX bar, it is low fat, but now you're getting into, this is a good example of a protein bar that actually has a good amount more carbohydrate and fat than it does protein, right? Twice as many carbohydrates as it does protein. It does still have a good protein source here, so I wouldn't say it's a bad bar by any means, but there are way better options out there for a protein bar. This G2G bar, similar story to the Fit Crunch, where the fat intake is really creeping up there. And unlike the Fit Crunch, this has more carbohydrates than protein, does have a good protein source, so we're going to C grade. These are also one of the better tasting bars that I've had. The Oat Mega and G2G are kind of my staples, but I'm also very rarely in a fat loss phase for what that's worth, okay? And then the Perfect Food bar here, the C grade, I could have given this a D grade, honestly, now that I look at it a little bit more objectively next to these other few. So again, the protein, the fat intake is very, very high, more carbohydrates than protein here, does have a good protein source. The Perfect Food bar is a little bit more of a meal replacement than it is a protein bar. I mean, there's even more fat in the bar than there is protein, right? So I'm not sure what that is by percentages, but for fat loss clients, this is not really a good bar for them to be having. A lot of my higher level CrossFit athletes love this bar, and that would make sense because if I have a CrossFit athlete needs to eat, female eating 3,000 calories a day, it's hard to do that without some dense foods. But if you're someone that's on 55 grams of fat and 210 carbs a day trying to lose fat, this is probably not a good allocation of those numbers. And then lastly here we have I think this is called Linny's or Larry's Complete Cookies. But these are very, very popular as far as a protein cookie. I actually think I may have messed this up, so I might have to change this. This might be 16 grams for this protein intake. I'm actually pretty sure it is, but it doesn't really change its actual grade, to be honest with you. So the grade being a ton of carbohydrates here, which is not going to be ideal. This is the correct fat intake, I think. And I do think it's 16 grams of protein, but the protein source is also pea. So 16 grams of pea protein versus the equivalent amount of either whey or egg or milk you've seen on this list is not going to be the same, right? So that's probably the worst of topical protein bars, cake bites, things like that I've seen on here. Just because, again, the source is bad and it's a ton of calories for not that much protein. So those are the 12 I went over, guys. Again, I'll fix this. I'm pretty sure it's 16 here before I post it for you guys. But again, kind of hopefully maybe you've heard a handful of these bars on here. Maybe you eat a handful of on here. And maybe if you're kind of eating some of these here, you can make some smarter decisions and get into this A or B grade. And if you are in this A or B grade, that's just a good sign you're making some good decisions. And if you see something that on the shelves at a supermarket, like a Cliff Bar or a Builder Bar, there's other really popular ones I didn't go over. Just analyze it through these three filters. It's fat intake, how many carbs versus how much protein it has, and then what its protein source is. And then you can make a good decision on that. So hopefully you guys like this video. Again, thank you, Caitlin, for the recommendation on this. And as always, guys, I create content for you guys to learn. So if you have any suggestions on what you want me to cover, just let me know and I'll make sure that's on my list. All right, thank you.